If you would like an opportunity to be on Crazy Love Chronicles and tell your story of betrayal, infidelity, ghosting, being ghosted, catfish, and many more things, crazy relationships, contact us at crazylovechronicles@gmail.com or send us a message on any of our social media platforms and we will contact you. Please stay tuned for our next session. Our story, your story, real and uncut.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another entertaining and enlightening episode of Crazy Love Chronicles. I am your host, Chanel Black. And today, SHEMIKA joins us. Hi, SHEMIKA.
Hi, Chanel.
SHEMIKA, you want to talk to me about a time when you were betrayed. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about it. How did you meet this person? I don't know if this is a boyfriend or a husband.
So, this was a while back, so this was pre-social media and online dating phase. So I met this person in person. I was actually driving summertime, drove by a friend's or family friend's auto body shop, and he was standing out there, and he kind of waved me over. And I was like, it's summertime, you're single, you're young. I'm like, he's kind of cute. So I stopped. We have a conversation, and come to find out this person was related to a family friend of mine,
Okay.
A really close family friend. He actually, his uncle and my dad were really close. So he asked me to give him a ride, and I was like, of course, I don't know you, so you're not getting in my car. But after finding out who he was related to and how we were like sort of interconnected, I was like, okay, I'll give you a ride, because it just so happened that his family lived maybe 2 blocks away from it.
Okay.
So gave him the ride, we exchanged numbers, and from there we started a relationship.
Mm-hmm. So what was your first impression? I mean, you thought he was cute. Was there anything else that stood out to you?
Truthfully, I thought he was cute. I had never saw him before. And at that time, I was just like, he could get it. It was just one of those type of things.
Right.
It did start off as something physical, but crazily or ironically, after a couple days, he was just like, you're going to be mine. And I was like, you're crazy. Whatever. And he didn't stop until that happened, until that occurred. So going in, I didn't expect much, but it grew into something more than I intended, basically.
Okay, so would you say, how long did it take to actually become official then?
So I want to say maybe some months.
Okay.
Some months. Yeah, some months.
Okay.
Summertime, we feeling ourselves. We don't have any kids. We want to have fun. We're like, I don't want to be in a relationship. Relationships tie me down. So he definitely
he was persistent.
Impressed. Yeah, he was persistent. He impressed. And finally, I was just like, you look up and you notice every day you're spending time with this person, and they're becoming a larger part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, oh wow, I might as well, because we're speaking more often. I'm either with him or he's with me, or we're on the phone. So that's how that kind of grew and changed, basically.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember that moment where you're just kind of like, all right, this is it, or was it casual? Was it something romantic, or you just said, yeah, you know what? I'll stop talking to everybody else, and it'll just be all about you.
I remember that we had a crazy friendship that I could tell him anything, even about somebody else. And he never was like jealous or overbearing about it. He always had that personality that he made me feel I could come to him and tell him anything.
Mm-hmm.
I also remember he paid attention to details. He was that person, some men we speak and it goes in one ear and out the other. He could regurgitate everything I said. He could ask me, hey, how did that situation occur? Or did you make out? Super attentive, super detail oriented. And I was like, oh, okay. Started having lunch with me daily at my job. Are you hungry? Do you have money? Just very, attentive and are you okay? And that type of situation. So eventually, after having that, it's like, okay, I could get used to this.
Right. So you were very happy,
Oh
going through
yeah,
this process with
absolutely.
him and spending time. So at what point did you notice something was wrong, or when did you see signs that maybe he's changing, or maybe something's a little different?
Funnily, I did not see those signs until we got married.
Oh, okay. All right.
So he was very good at so disclaimer, let me also put this in here. When I met him, he was visiting. He was not from here. He was
Okay.
from another country. So he would actually go back and forth. So I feel like now in hindsight, I didn't get to see that side because he wasn't here permanently. You know what I'm saying? When he was here, it was all about me, and then when he would have to travel back and forth, of course, and we understood that, hey, when you travel, I'm single. I'm single.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but I would say maybe some months after I found out he wasn't so forthcoming, he kept the fact that he was already married from me.
Oh.
And I found that out. That was the first, like, oh my gosh.
Okay. So did you find out that he was already married before you two got married, and then he got divorced, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So by the time he was smart, by the time I found out he was married, I was already in love. And of course it was, well, she's the mother of my children, because there were 2 kids I knew nothing about as well. And it was like I only married her for stability with my children. I didn't grow up with a father, and I want to make sure that, my kids are stable and that type of thing.
Was she in this country
No,
too? Okay.
she's out of the country. So that's why it was super hard for me to verify anything this person said, because his other family and other life was outside of the U.S.
Okay.
So when I found out about that, of course, I was crushed. I was hurt. I was upset.
Well, how did you find out?
I found out by a relative.
Oh, okay.
A relative of his came to my house. So to skip a couple, or to go back so we don't skip a couple paces, my ex came to this country, wasn't a citizen, so I knew how he made his money wasn't legit.
Okay.
Let's leave it like that.
Okay.
There was a situation that happened where some stuff came up missing at the house that he was staying at, and he was staying, remember, with that relative that I was telling you about.
Okay.
And she knew my parents. Her and my parents were, very close, still are very close. I and his cousins actually, grew up together, went to birthday parties. We were just always in each other's lives.
Okay.
And so she came to the house. She knew it was me he was dealing with. One day my mother left out, and she said, "I'll be back." And then I heard her come in, and I heard a voice. It was the aunt. She basically told me, but she told me with the intention of trying to get me in my upset or anger to let her know where he was, because she was looking for him, and there was some stuff going on, and she was trying to get to the bottom of it.
Okay.
So it spilled out that way. When it spilled out, it's funny because my mother thought I knew, and his relative looked at me and she said she didn't know. I can tell from her face she did not know that was the case. So I found out that way.
Wow.
It's funny, while she was talking to me and telling me, my phone was ringing upstairs, and it was him. And she said, "That's him calling her right now." So they talk every day. They're always together. So yeah, that's how I found out. Yep.
Okay, and that's when you eventually talked to him, and he said, "Stability, that's the mother of my kids," and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
Okay,
so he was like,
and then does he promise you, "I'm going to file for divorce"?
At that point, no. So what happens at that point is I'm just like, and I think I wasn't upset about the marriage part. I think I was more hurt about not telling me about the children, because you can deny a woman, but your kids, that's a different ball game for me. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, at that point there was like no discussion of marriage, because at that point I just was like, you know what, I don't want anything to do with you. I can't believe you did this. And of course, my ex is a narcissist. I now know that. Mm-hmm. So he doubled down and did whatever. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm there, but I'm not. And it was, in fact, the truth at that time. Even though his domicile was there, he was spending 9 months out of 12 here. It was like, you have to look at the facts. So it was more so, I apologize, I'm sorry, you are the person I love and care about, you're the person I want to be with. Ultimately, I, am going to be here permanently, and I would like for that to be with you.
Okay.
And I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like, they all say that, so whatever. And then eventually it happened. It came to pass. Like, he one day made a decision and said, you know what, I want to be here, and I'd like to be here with you. But in between that, I had like a relationship or two, because I saw where, okay, I'm not waiting on you. I have no chick or child. I'm single. Mm-hmm. You have a whole wife and kids at home. So while you're there, I'm going to have fun. And if I meet somebody worth being serious with, then that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
It just so happened that those relationships kind of didn't pan out. And then when he decided to come back and be permanent and get a divorce, I was available. And so we just resumed. Because we always maintained a friendship. We always had the type of relationship where I could call on him for anything, he could call on me for anything, whether we were together in a physical capacity or not. So we also had that. We always had that layer. And then it's like we just resumed after he decided, okay, this is it. I'm going to stay here.
Okay. After you get married, what happens?
After I get married, he moves with me. He lives with me. I had a business at the time, and shortly thereafter, we have a discussion. He has 2 sons, and he says, hey, I would possibly like to have a child, a daughter, possibly, here. And I'm still so in love, because after that situation, didn't have any other issues. So I'm so in love. I'm like, okay, all right, let's go.
Let's start building a family.
Yeah. So I'm like, I get pregnant, and it's twins. Oh. And of course, he's beaming with pride. And I'm like, you did nothing. Twins running my family. It would have been anybody. And then as I'm pregnant, I see things starting to happen and trickle, and I start seeing the downward descent of the relationship.
Okay.
So I see, like, there's a female friend that he has that calls a little too much for me. I see where he, has inappropriate things in his phone.
Okay.
Those things. And then as women, we're like, okay, all right. So at this point, I'm like 8 months, 9 months pregnant, about to have the kids. And I make a decision at that point, because we as women, we don't want to make a decision based on emotion. So I say, let me give my marriage one more, shot.
Okay, but at this point, you don't have any major proof that he has been unfaithful.
No, none of that.
There are just these little signs and these little annoyances and different things that kind of make you, that are red flags, but nothing where you can say,
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And keep in mind, too, I have to also own that I had relationships. There was a time, like, I had a relationship, and that relationship started ending, and I resumed my relationship back with him prior to ending that relationship. So it was a messy situation.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, it takes time for, everyone to get whatever. And so I have our twins, and shortly after having our twins, it starts to get a bit more excessive. So what happens is his kids come to visit, and he winds up telling his kids, oh, you guys are staying, and doesn't have a conversation with me. I'm like, wait a minute, they don't even know you're living here.
Okay.
Exactly. So how can you make a decision like that? And so that happens, and then I notice, like, it really starts ramping up. Like it was almost like, okay, we're married, we got kids, I know she's not going anywhere. So I start seeing trips being taken, and I need some time away, and I need this, and I want that, and I want whatever. And mind you, this is a partner who initially was fine spending all their time
with you. He was there every day, all day. You're always in each other's faces.
Yeah. And so I'm like, what's going on? So literally, I had a conversation, and I asked him, and it's funny because we have to be careful what we ask, and we have to be ready for the truth when we get it. And so I asked him one day, I said, where's this coming from? You was never like this, initially when I first met you. And he looked at me, he said, I didn't know anybody then.
Oh.
And I was like,
isn't that
wow. I said, okay. So it got to a point where it was multiple people. It wasn't just one. It wasn't just two. It was 3, 4. They would be bold. They would call the phone 2:00 in the morning. He would take trips and leave me and my kids plus his kids. And I was like, yeah, this has to end. Like, this is not going to work. And then ultimately, the straw that broke the camel's back, there was a situation where a female called him 2:00 in the morning. I'll never forget. He was asleep. I answered the phone. No, I didn't answer the phone. I called back the phone because I didn't get to his phone in time. Needless to say, I woke him up and I said, who is this chick? It had to be a chick. I'm like, who's this person calling you 2:00 in the morning? And he took the phone and went back to sleep, not knowing that I have a photographic memory. So I had memorized the number in those couple of seconds, called the number from my phone, and of course a female answered. And I said, who is this? And she said who she was. And I said who I was, so-and-so's wife, and click, the person just hung up. And by the time she hung up, he had sprung up off the bed and was upset that I called this woman, and we get to fighting.
Wow. Like, how dare you? How dare you discover that he's cheating? How dare you,
Yes. And when I say fighting, I mean, like, I had, in my bedroom, I was able to have a love seat plus a queen-size bed. So I'm on a love seat with my laptop doing, like, schoolwork or paper. He's over top of me, choking me. I'm uppercutting him. The laptop falls. The screen crashes. My stepsons have to come get him. And I was like, yeah, this has to end.
Oh, no.
So literally,
I'm sorry that happened to you.
But you know what? Here's the thing. I think sometimes we need those things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we need that because in the past, it had never escalated to that point. In the past, it would just be you get caught doing something, you get emotional because that's my soft spot because I don't like for anybody to be emotional, much less a man. When you realize that wasn't working anymore, now we got to escalate this thing. We got to step it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that to say, had that not been done, sometimes we have to be incensed in order to move.
Right. So you think you probably would have tolerated it a little bit more, but at that point, enough was enough?
Oh, yeah. And then the embarrassment of not only my kids, but in front of his kids were older.
Okay.
See, that's another thing. He was older than me. My ex was 17 or 18 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so he's old, you know what I'm saying? So his kids were literally, they could have been a couple years shy of my peer group at that time.
Okay.
So the fact of the matter is, you do this, we have our kids, we're already in a tense situation, overcrowded, and you're still, not satisfied. And to add insult to injury, you do this. So I was like, yeah, you got to go. So the police come out, of course, crime scene comes, they take pictures. Now, here's the situation. I'm caught in a conundrum because he's not from the U.S., and if he gets arrested, he can be deported.
Okay.
So even in my anger, I have to think logically.
And you still want to protect him, even though he's done that to you.
I have to think logically about my next move. And remember, his 2 children are at my home as well.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. So the police come, they take him away. I said to the police, I don't want him arrested. Just take him away for the night. Because we had never had any kind of situation at my home before anyway. So it's not like the police are tired. They've come to the house 3 or 4 times.
Right.
This was the first situation.
Okay.
And so they come, they take pictures, and the police are asking me questions. And unbeknownst to me, I'm digging his grave deeper.
Right. I can relate to that.
Yeah, because they're asking me, like, were you afraid for your life? And they're like, oh, and you could literally see the indentations of his nails in my neck. So they're like, were you afraid for your life? I said, hell yeah, I couldn't breathe. And, in my anger and utterance, I didn't realize, like, oh, they're adding charges by asking you.
Yeah. Yep.
So, long story short, he gets arrested. Of course, they put a restraining order against me and him. And so the same uncle that was close to my dad, I bailed him out. I paid the money, but I didn't go get him. The uncle went and got him. Because at that point, I knew it was over, but I knew there were things I had to do in order to sever that relationship. I couldn't just leave it as is. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So literally went to court, put my hand up, refused to testify.
Mm-hmm.
And the case was thrown out. And after the case was thrown out, I just started my transition of severing our things that we had. So I had bought him a car. Both of our name, his name and my name was on a car. Of course, his phone was, family plan. We're married.
Of course.
So I had to take care of all of that. And then figure out getting the kids situated because their mom, she was here, but she wasn't in the state. She was out of state.
Right.
I had never spoken to her. She and I didn't have a rapport or a relationship for me to say, hey, well, the kids need to come with you. So I had to think about all of that. So literally started making the moves to sever the relationship. Yeah, and went from there and just started taking little steps. And ultimately one day I got, one of my stepsons went to New York and went to live with one of the chicks that I felt was too comfy.
Oh.
Come to find out, one day I call her when I'm pregnant. And I say, I asked her, I say, yeah, this is, Shemika. And she kindly lets me know that she has been his side chick for 20 years.
Oh, my goodness.
And she will not leave him. She's never leaving him. And I said, what?
Wait. Is this before you had the twins?
Remember I told you when I was pregnant, I started seeing some stuff.
Oh, okay. All right. So I wasn't sure. So this was one of the conversations that happened.
Yeah. So this was while I was pregnant. I called her because, instinctually we know something's not right.
Yeah, definitely.
And there was a female friend that he had that, he would wish her happy Mother's Day, but she didn't have any kids. Why are you wishing this person happy Mother's Day? She's your friend, but you didn't let her know that I'm pregnant. Okay. Why can't she not know that I'm pregnant if she's your friend? So come to find out, the reason being was apparently he had promised her after he left his wife, she would be next.
Oh, wow.
So he couldn't now let her know that I came into the picture and threw the whole, dynamic off.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she told me that, it was funny because she started out upset with me and carrying on, and she was, unbeknownst to her, she didn't know that I had traveled out of the country to see him.
Okay.
She's like, wait a minute, you guys only have a relationship when he's there. I said, I've been there several times, and guess who's taken me around several times? Him. And then we're comparing notes, and she finds out that there's a time she was hospitalized, and he's taking me around. I'm on vacation, and he's touring me around, and she's hospitalized. And what also comes out is she was pregnant. Him and her got into a fight. She lost the baby. So
he was physically abusive to her.
Yes. So I said, what? I said, listen, y'all can have each other. I said, listen, y'all older, y'all can have each other. I said, and you personally, you don't have no ambition. Because a side chick for 20 years, are you crazy? Like what? You can have each other. I said, check this out. Let him know if you love him. He has 30 minutes to bring my car, or I'm reporting that shit stolen. Like, that's how mad I was. And he bought the car back, of course. But yeah, it was...
Okay, so you eventually got back in contact with her again after he had assaulted you, and then you discovered that they were still in contact with each other?
No.
Okay.
So I never spoke to her again. She
moved. Got it.
She wound up in New York. And what happened was, when she heard, of course, that him and I weren't working out, she figured, let me extend an olive branch. So she let his oldest son come and stay with her.
Okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
Thinking that would draw them closer. Mm. And he decided not to move. He was like, I'm not moving. The one smart thing I can say he did was, once him and I left, he said, I'm not living with another woman. I need to live on my own. Mm-hmm. So that's the one lesson he learned very, very well, and got that quickly. So come to find out, that's who the oldest son was staying with. And then there was a situation him and I had. One day we were on the phone, we were talking, and my youngest stepson wanted to go visit his brother because now they're separated. Remember, they come to this country together. They're staying with me, and then the oldest goes to New York.
Okay.
So he was taking the youngest, and I said to him, what day are you taking him? And he told me today. And I said, well, why don't you take him on this day? Because, I'm off and I don't have anybody to watch the kids. And he just was like, I don't give a fuck about nobody. I don't got shit to do with them kids. I don't got nothing to do with you. And I was like, what? So I remember I went home that day. I had told my job at the time, because we know we see things brewing. I told my job, I said, listen, I'm getting ready to go through a divorce, so it's going to be a day I call y'all. I'm going to be late. I need y'all to just be on board when I call you. They were like, okay. And this was the day. We had a mutual friend, and a mutual friend. It was so funny because I was so calm about my leaving. People didn't believe what was going on.
Okay.
Like, people couldn't believe.
So you didn't fall apart. You just like...
No. Because again, mentally, I had already knew what had to be done. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And at that point, I had begged, I had pleaded, I had cheated back to see if we had did all of that dance. And if that doesn't work, literally at some point we have to say, This is not a mistake. This is a lifestyle. This is how you choose to live. And that's fine. You're just not going to force me to live that way.
Mm-hmm. So basically, in hindsight and looking at everything and looking at the whole situation, do you feel like how was your healing process? Do you feel like you were traumatized by any of it? Do you feel like you didn't even realize how strong you were? You just went through it and...
So the healing was multi-layered. It was a couple of things. Number one, I could not believe that this person who I could not function without. Because when you and somebody are so heavily intertwined and do things together, and someone is your best friend, and you don't realize how much of a space they occupy. And sometimes you almost can lose your identity. You know what I'm saying? You're no longer Shemika. You're this person's wife. You're this person's whatever. And so I went through a couple of stages. I went through the I couldn't believe it stage, where I'm like, hey, I did everything right. Like, I went through the Keisha Cole, I should have cheated stage. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe I should have been at home because this didn't work out. And then I went through right away. As women, especially Black women, we got to go into survival mode because we got kids to take care of.
Right.
So thankfully, I had family who was wiser than me and who knew. Like, I remember an uncle pulled my coattail and he said, "Listen, you were able to put that man out and keep moving like nothing mattered." He said, "You've hurt his pride." And I said, "What do you mean? I left him alone. He should be like," he said, "No, that's not the point. The point is you were able to move on and you're no longer needing him. So he's going to make it hard for you. He knows you don't have anybody to keep those children, and that's where he's going to give you your most problems." Right. And I was so naive. I was like, "No, we're going to be civil." You know what I'm saying? No. And I remember that uncle, he said, "Listen, I'm going to offer you something." He said, "You're my favorite niece." He said, "You're rebuilding, you're learning yourself, you're rebranding." He said, "And I know you'll use this time to get together." He said, "Send the kids to me," because I have family out of the country as well. He said, "Send the kids to me. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'll put them in private school." Because at that time, I was paying $1,000 a month for my twins in preschool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the agreement was he would pay for weekend care since I was paying for preschool.
Okay.
Well, he goes to the daycare lady. There was a lady I found because my twins are 10 now. So they were 3 at the time. So you talk about 7 years ago. 7 years ago, 24-hour daycare was unheard of.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was one of those things that was like, what? You found one? Wait, where is it? The job that I had, I worked every weekend. The weekend was my schedule. So I worked Friday and Saturday. Friday, I think I worked 2 to midnight. And Saturday, I worked 12 to 10. That was the whole weekend. You know what I'm saying? So I literally, was not going to be able to keep them. I remember he went to the daycare lady. I sent my ex. I didn't even tell him about it because I said I don't want him to feel like I'm trying to get over him in any way. And he went to the lady, and he asked, this fool asked the daycare lady, mind you, he didn't work every weekend. He worked Monday through Friday, maybe a Saturday, and for overtime. And he said, "How much would it be to drop my kids off on Friday and pick them up on Sunday?"
Oh, my goodness.
And she said $300 a weekend, which, if you think about it, for 2 kids is not unreasonable because she would be feeding them, she would be putting them to bed, she would be clothing them. You're talking about from Friday to Sunday. That's 36 hours, actually 72 hours.
Okay.
So when that happened, it forced me to wake up like, listen, this is not the person that you can really rely on. You may need to take, your relative up on that offer. So I did. My kids were able to go to school out of the country for 3 years. And in that moment, it was the hardest thing I had to do, but it was also the best thing I had to do because they got to learn both sides of our culture, and it also made my kids different.
Okay.
My kids are different in how they think about people. Are they compassionate? Are they self-centered? Do they realize that the world does not revolve around them? My kids, they have technology, but my son can go climb a tree and be just as satisfied and fulfilled. So in the moment, it was the hardest thing I had to do. And I remember I literally went with them. My daughter had to get a tonsillectomy and an adenoidectomy. For people who are unaware, basically my daughter, she used to sound like Biggie. Okay. Her nose would always run. And when she breathed, it was like, her tonsils were blocking her airways. Okay. And so it was something that was hereditary. I had to get my tonsils removed young. My mom had to get hers. So we knew what it was when we saw it. Okay. And I thought it was a situation where we could wait. And look how God works. I had asked for time off to take my kids off. I had just started a job, so I couldn't get it. I wasn't eligible for vacation time or anything like that. Took her to Johns Hopkins. for that. And they said, oh, no, she needs that surgery now, like today. And so right away, FMLA is able, because she's my daughter, and we have to get this done. So I was able to take 3 weeks off, go out of the country with my kids, have a semi-vacation with them, and then I had to leave. I had to creep out in the morning like a thief because I couldn't tell them bye. And literally that was when Skype and certain things were becoming popular.
Right.
And so I had to make sure my relatives had, the internet so I could Skype with them. But it was the hardest thing for me to do, like the hardest thing. But I literally used to pray, like, Lord, please don't let my kids think I hated them or I didn't love them, and that's why I did it. But me being a prior victim of molestation and them being 3, I said I would rather send them thousands of miles away and know they're absolutely safe than to have them here and have someone tolerating and they can't speak or defend themselves.
Right.
And my parents weren't in a position to help me because they worked a job, they had their own business, they had a mortgage to pay. Right. So right away, I had to make some really hard decisions.
So it's good that
my healing was like multi-layered. So thankfully, that relative was able to be wise and say, I'm going to offer you this. Whether you take it or not, I'm going to put this on the table as an option for you.
So you were blessed. You were definitely blessed to have that kind of support.
Even in that situation, I was. But trust me, when I first got out of the country, I was thinking to myself, like, maybe I should just have somebody take him out and get the insurance money. When you're in it, you can't believe it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't believe the things that you've gone through with this person. This was a person who, when they came to this country, didn't have a place to stay and used to sleep in my car.
Oh, my goodness.
I lived at home, so I couldn't bring this person to my parents' house, but they would sneak in, take a shower, change, so I'm like, we went through all of these things.
For him to be so disloyal.
Exactly.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I know. Sadly, I know exactly what you mean.
Was sitting under a tree and my uncle came and it's like he could read my face. He says, it's going to be all right, babe. He says, it's going to be all right, I promise you.
Well,
it's
SHEMIKA,
be all right,
let me ask you this question. So what advice would you give to someone that's in shock right now? They're listening to your story. They're in shock right now. They just discovered that their husband has been unfaithful or kept these, secrets, has betrayed them, has been disloyal. Or even their wife. It's a husband out there that's listening to you.
So you know what? Here's the first thing that I'll say. The first thing I will say is don't own it. For me, I at one point was trying to own it. I literally went to my ex-husband's friends and said, was it me? And they were like, absolutely not, Mika. Like, we know. He told us stories about y'all. Because as females, we sometimes think, okay, maybe I didn't have sex enough. Maybe I wasn't sexy enough. Maybe I got inundated with the children. Maybe, different things.
That you were inadequate in some type of way.
Exactly.
I went through that phase too.
We own someone else's inadequacy. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing, is to say, you know what, this has nothing to do with me. Because even a lesser person will try to justify that and say, oh, well, I did it because you didn't do this.
Right.
Or because whatever. So if you're in shock, that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is just to have a great support system. I have a sisterhood. I have friends who can say, all right, chick, you're doing too much now. Calm down. You know what I'm saying? I understand what you feeling. I understand what you're going through. You are justified in your feelings, but let's not act on those feelings right now. Okay. You got more to lose in doing that. And go through it. Don't try to speed through it. You know what I'm saying? Don't try to not feel it by bringing somebody else in or focusing on something else, because you now have to relearn your routine. You now have to relearn who you are, as without this person, without this component in your life. You know what I'm saying? And if kids are involved, you definitely got to make sure you are in a position to love on yourself so you can love on them.
Right.
So I would say, first of all, don't own it. And taking care of self could be so many different things for different people. I remember when I was going through my divorce, there were days I would feel like crap, and you know what I would do? I would just dress up, just so I would propel the opposite of what I felt.
Right.
And somebody saying, hey, you look nice today, you don't know how that lifted me in that moment. Right. Because in my mind, do I even still have it? You know, my body has changed. I have 2 kids now. I did put on weight. Maybe, again, as a female thing, it's me. And so I always tell people, don't own it. So support system, not owning it, and then just taking your time and going through it. You have to give yourself time too. A divorce is almost like a death.
Yeah, and that's why when you said that it was like you were grieving, and you were saying you were in shock, and it's like the same 7 stages or however many stages it is to death. You know, it's like the same stages that you go through when you go through a divorce. It's the shock, it's the blame, like is it my fault, and then you switch to anger. You know, how dare this happen?
Yeah.
And you know, you go through that. I think that you have definitely given our listeners a lot of good feedback and information. I want to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story.
Thank you.
And we wish you and our listeners happiness, healing, and hope. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in to Crazy Love Chronicles. You can check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can stay tuned to us on Spreaker, Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube, but please be sure to subscribe. Click the bell to be notified for future videos by Crazy Love Chronicles. Our story, your story, real and uncut.